Hello and welcome back. We are in lecture 3 today. Till now in this module, this is module 10. In this module, we are looking at the communication aspect as to how children learn different aspects of communication in real life scenario. Within this, we have already looked at the maxims of Grice with respect to that the conversation needs to be informative, it needs to be relevant, it needs to have the adequate amount of information, it should be true and so on and so forth. But in real life, the communication does not go that way all the time. So, sometimes people will say something, mean something else, sometimes they will give less information, sometimes more information. So, in a real life conversation, the children need to figure out what is implied rather than what is said very often. So, that is the inference we are talking about. So, we have seen this before as well, the previous lectures also. So, we will take this discussion forward where we are discussing another kind of inference which is called implicature. Within implicature, there are two kinds, there is a scalar implicature and there is relevance implicature. So, what are these two kinds of implicatures? These arise when there is a violation of one of the conversational maxims as far as Grice is concerned. So, the listener is expected to notice this violation and as a result of which draw their own inferences. So, as I just said that conversation does not always go in a linear fashion. I do not always say exactly what I want to mean. That is the beauty of human communication, that is the beauty of language use. So, language use in real scenario needs the conversation partners to infer a lot of things that are probably not said. So, the idea of implicature is based on that when there is a violation of one of the maxims of Grice, then and also the conversation partner has noticed it and therefore, they are able to infer what is actually meant. So, based on this there are two kinds of violations and as a result we have two kinds of implicatures. So, one of them is called scalar implicature, the other is called the relevance implicature. So, scalar implicature is the violation of the maxim of quantity and the relevance implicature is the violation of the maxim of relation. So, we will take them one by one. We will start with scalar implicature. Now, scalar implicature, the idea comes from the word scale. Now, in terms of quantifier, for example, we understand many different things in life, different kinds of experiences, different kinds of concrete thing as well in terms of quantification. We quantify our experiences. So, sometimes we say I am really very sad or sometimes you say I am very happy. So, even an abstract thing like emotion can be quantified. Similarly, many other concrete things. So, in this domain we are talking about the maxim of quantity. So, here sometimes people may use, so in any kind of quantification there is a scale. At the one end of the scale there is the most and at the other end of the scale you have the least. So, none and all. If you are using terms like this, then one end of the maximum will be all, the minimum will be none and in between you have many different possibilities, some, few and so on. So, on a scale of let us say 5, you have 0 will be none, all will be 5 and then in between you can have 3 more or you can have more, the scale can be on a broader level as well. So, this is what we understand when we talk about quantification. Now, let us take the example of some, few, all, etc. On a scale, all is considered a strong term, that is the technical term used, all will be a strong term and few or some will be weak ones. So, if you are talking about quantifying objects, quantifying anything, any real life object in a concrete object or an abstract thing, you can have a scale from all to none. So, all as a result is considered a strong term and few and some are weak terms within that scale. Now, if one uses the term sum to quantify something, whatever that may be, it would normally mean not all. So, there is a reason why we have different terms for different kinds of quantification. So, if we want to mean that one portion of the entire entity is what I mean, then I will use some or few or something. So, I have a few books. I do not have a few books from my friend who shifted the city, shifted out of the town. So, that means I do not have all her books, I have taken some of her books, probably those ones that I really liked. So, I have taken. So, in this kind of a scenario, we do not mean all, we actually mean some. So, if that is the case, when we use some or few, the listener in this kind of a sentence, the listener will infer that the strong alternative does not hold, meaning that the strong alternative is not the appropriate one, meaning that I actually mean some or few, not the entire lot of the books. However, in real life that might not always be the case. So, if sometimes the stronger alternative may be true, but I have still used the weaker alternative. In such a case, the use of weaker scale will be pragmatically inappropriate. So, if I want to mean all, but I have said some, that is the problem. That is where there is a violation of the maxim of quantity, because I am not being truthful about the exact quantity of the thing I am talking about. So, this is what is called pragmatically inappropriate. Now, this has to be understood by the listener. So, the idea here has to do with what a term implies and whether the implication is right or wrong and where it lies on the scale. So, what the term means, where is it on the scale, is it appropriate or not, all of these we are computing when we listen to any sentence that uses quantifier. When we use the term some, so we exclude the sense all from it, like a sentence, this is an example, I ate some of the cheese. Now, we infer this meaning because we follow the Grecian maxim of quantity, that is, remember, that is what we discussed. So, most conversations typically will follow these rules. So, we tend to infer the exact meaning because that is what, according to Grice, on which the conversation is based. So, speaker is striving to be as informative as needed, right, that is what the maxim says, and hence we would have meant some and not all. But however, in real life that is not how always go, it is not always linear. So, there are some studies that we will look at now. So, one of them studied this phenomenon among adults and children. The study went like this: English and French adults and children were participating in this study, and they had to judge how true a particular sentence was. So, the created sentences in English and French on using quantifier like some, all, few, like this, and the participants, both the adults and the children, they had to say whether it is true or not, whether the sentence is true or not. A very simple task, they will see a sentence and say yes or no, true or false. Now, one of those sentences was like this: some giraffes have long necks. So, this is the quantifier that they used. Now, what did they find? They found that adults rejected such sentences 59% of the time, which is quite a large amount. So, we can safely say majority of the times the adults rejected such sentence. Why? Because in this sentence some implies not all, because that is what our implicature says, that if you are using some, it means some. That is how the sentence should mean if we follow maxim of quantity. But in reality that is not how it is, because it is not some giraffes, but all giraffes have long necks. As a result, you are violating that principle. So, adults have noticed that there is a violation of the principle of quantity, and as a result they have understood. So, they infer this sentence to be incorrect. That is what the whole thing is all about. So, this is a scalar implicature. So, where on the scale from 0 to none to all, 0 to all, where do we place the uttered quantifier and whether it is truthful or not, it is also dependent upon your real life knowledge. Now, the adults could easily discard this sentence as not true, because they know that all giraffes have long necks. Hence, saying that some giraffes have long necks is wrong. Wrong because it is the implication is wrong. Of course, some of the giraffes have long necks because a subset of all giraffes also have long necks, but the overall implicature is that the term some negates the existence of all. So, that is how the understanding by adults is. So, this means the adults noticed the violation of the maxim, and as a result of which they inferred it correctly, and use of some is hence inappropriate in this case. Now, this is fine, this is how adults typically tend to behave in this kind of a scenario. Now, we will see how children behaved. The children were 8 to 10 years of age. They accepted the sentences 85% of the time, in a much larger proportion than the adults who rejected this. Majority of children actually accepted this sentence as true, and they were not very small, they were 8 to 10 years of age, only 15% rejected it. Now, what is happening? The author said that the children did not compute the scalar implicature like adults do. You need to compute, right. So, there is a scale, you immediately activate your mental scale, where does sum belong, does it truthfully represent the real life scenario or not. So, what is the person implying, and so on and so forth. So, a lot of mental calculation is part of understanding this sentence properly and thereby judging it. So, as far as the output by the children goes, the author said that they did not get it right. So, subsequent studies with 5 to 9-year-olds also have shown that children do not reject under informative as adults do, because this is under informative, it should be all giraffes have long necks. So, you are not giving the whole information. So, many studies found the same kind of acceptance rate by children and rejection rate by adults. But however, as children grow, they tend to have higher rejection rate as opposed to higher acceptance rate. Now, why do children find scalar implicature difficult? Because this seems to be the finding across a number of studies that say that most of the time children accept it as true. What is happening here? Are they not capable of understanding the implied meaning, or are they not able to follow the violation of the maxim, or what is happening? There are many hypotheses. One of them is called pragmatic delay hypothesis. So, pragmatic delay hypothesis basically say that this pragmatic development, we have seen it before in the previous lectures, that pragmatic competence or communicative competence, these things develop slowly. It takes a lot of time, as opposed to the grammatical understanding or structural understanding of language. Pragmatic understanding takes longer, and that is why children develop these abilities much they take longer to develop this ability, sometimes till adolescence they go. So, that is how the idea is that the pragmatic delay is the reason why children of this age range do not have the ability to reason about the speaker's intention and thereby finding fault with it or whatever. However, this theory has been rejected primarily for two reasons. One reason is that many studies have found that in other domains children are actually quite capable of reasoning, not exactly in this scalar implicature domain, but in other domains the research finding points towards the idea that children are actually smarter than we thought them to be, which is something we have seen all throughout this course in many domains, that children are actually much more capable of processing information than we think they are. So, for example, in one of those studies that have been put forward as a counter example is that children familiar with the word 1 will assume that an unfamiliar number word like 5 refers to a group of objects rather than a single object. So, if the child has learned the number word 1 and they know what it means. So, learning means they know what it means in the real life. So, then when they are encountering another number word, they know that this does not mean the same thing. So, number word 1 refers to one entity in the real world. So, now if you are teaching them the number word 5, they know for sure that it is not the same thing. It must be meaning more than 1, because 1 we have already that slot is taken. So, that kind of basic reasoning ability children already have and very early age. So, it is not lack of reasoning capacity that is resulting in their inability to process scalar implicature. That is one of the arguments against the pragmatic delay hypothesis. Secondly, children actually can compute scalar implicature with if we tweak the scenario a little bit. For example, if we give them some sort of a helping hand in processing that information, then they actually are able to process. There are many studies on this. One of the more famous ones is by Papaphrago and colleagues. So, the study was like this. Children were shown a picture and then they were asked to help Minnie Mouse to choose the best description for the picture. So, there is a character, the entire thing is like a game. So, there is Minnie Mouse and Minnie Mouse has to describe a scene. There are various kinds of scene, there are pictures and the Minnie Mouse is a character whom the child is helping. So, the Minnie Mouse will describe the scene and if the description is wrong, the child has to help them. For example, in a picture of dog and a sentence, this is a little animal with 4 legs. Now, if the child did not say that the description is less than perfect, then the experimenter will prompt. So, the Minnie Mouse says that this is an animal, little animal with 4 legs. The child is expected to correct Minnie Mouse and say that this is a dog. If the child does not do that, the experimenter will help. This is how the entire experiment was built. Minnie did not say that right, this is a dog, that is how the experimenter will correct. And this was one aspect of the experiment. Another, there was also a background story that was created, which made it crucial for Minnie to get all the answers right, all the sentences right. Otherwise, she will be punished or something like that. So, children out of their own natural empathetic mentality, they will help Minnie get the sentences correct all the time. So, there were 2 conditions. One was Minnie was supposed to be correct. So, Minnie's being correct dependent on the child helping Minnie Mouse, and that is one. Secondly, if the child does not get the incorrect response properly, then the experimenter will help. With these 2 kinds of hypotheses, they were trying to see if with a little bit of help, the child actually gets the scalar implicature correct. The hypothesis therefore was that these 2 methods would make it easy for children to understand the scalar implicature in this scenario correctly, whatever is implied. And the results also showed the same, that children did pretty well when this kind of a helping hand was provided with respect to this kind of a context, because they created a context for Minnie to get it correct. So, children were paying more attention to exactly how the sentence would match the scenario, and on the other hand they were also getting corrected by the experimenter whenever they did not get it correct. So, because of all of this scaffolding, they actually got it correct. These results are compatible with what our researchers call pragmatic limitation hypothesis. So, this is another hypothesis with respect to how to explain the apparent failure of children to understand scalar implicature. So, this is the second hypothesis. Now, this hypothesis does not say that it is because of the delay that children have in terms of pragmatic development which is responsible for their failure. It says that it is about the cognitive effect, the cognitive load that the child is taking, because children's language skill are less efficient and less practiced than the adults, hence it requires more cognitive effort for them to process, because children by virtue of being children have less experience, as a result of which less understanding of the entire scenario. So, it needs more effort from them as opposed to adults. So, adding practice sessions or providing context can help them overcome this situation, which is what they found out. So, if you are helping to lessen the cognitive load by giving them a context, giving them a little bit of support, no, this is not right, you have to say like this. So, with little bit of nudging, they actually get it correct. So, this is why they have proposed that it is about cognitive load rather than delay in pragmatics. Similarly, in this hypothesis, the role of the question also has been discussed a lot, because when you ask if some giraffes have long neck, whether it is a right observation, whether it is truthful observation or not, the reason they do not reject this outright is because the sentence is actually not factually incorrect. Giraffes do have long necks. Some of them do. If you are thinking of it in terms of a subset of all the giraffes have long necks. So, it is not as wrong as giraffes have short necks. So, that is how probably they process. So, when you tell them that ask them is the sentence some giraffes have long necks is correct, they are actually comparing it with some giraffes have short necks and thereby saying that this is correct. Because for children it is a matter of right and wrong and not scalar right and scalar wrong. This is the idea that has been proposed by other groups. For example, this was tested by another group of researchers to find out whether that is the case. So, this was the study was like this. They devised a method where the child had to reword the speaker of a sentence. So, they created a character called Mr. Caveman. Now, Mr. Caveman was describing some scene, some similar kind like previous experiment. So, the caveman was giving a sentence that described a scene that was happening there. Now, the role of the child here was to reword the character called Mr. Caveman. If Mr. Caveman got the answers correct, she would give the caveman some strawberries. So, there were different sizes of strawberries. So, that is how they quantified the scalar implicature, whether the child got it right or whether the caveman got it right. So, they created by way of giving this kind of a stimulus, they created the graded response having graded reward system. So, the reward was strawberries of different sizes depending on how true the sentence was. So, the logic behind this design, as I was just explaining, was that this would teach the children to be sensitive to the scalar implicature, because they could see there was a concrete thing in front of them, strawberries of different sizes. So, correct answer big strawberry, wrong answer no strawberry, half correct small strawberry, like this. So, they could quantify it in a concrete term, and the hypothesis was that they will this time get it correct, because you were giving them some sort of a helping hand. So, the scalar implicature will be. So, if you are not giving them an option to between right and wrong, they do not have to say anything as wrong. Everything is right, but within right, if you make them, if you give them a little bit of nudge to find out the gradation within right, then how do they behave? And also you keep wrong as one of the options, not as either or, not as 0 and 1 kind of an option, because they will learn to differentiate between sentences without requiring them to reject the under informative ones. So, if it is partially correct, they had the option of giving them the medium size strawberry, for example. That is how the experiment was created. So, children would give Mr. Caveman bigger strawberries when the sentence was completely accurate, that is the optimal, when he got it absolutely correct. So, whatever the picture depicts, the caveman is describing it as it is, that is the optimal condition, and then caveman gets the bigger strawberries. Smaller ones, he will get smaller ones when it was under informative, it is a sum versus all. So, even if that is all implied, but he says some, the caveman still gets some strawberries. Thus, in a case of a sentence, so the turtle played with some of the balls is an under informative sentence, because the turtle was playing with all the balls. So, in this case, the child was expected to give smaller strawberries to Mr. Caveman. The results proved their hypothesis right. It was a very interesting experiment, and to see if in absence of them, in absence of a scenario where they have to reject one option, they actually did better. So, the child learned the difference. They would actually what they found out was very interesting for another reason. Of course, they would offer big strawberries to the caveman when his sentences were under informative. So, they gave them big because it was still correct. Remember that is why they did not reject the sentences in the first experiment. So, they understood it to be correct. So, big strawberries were given to him, not the small ones, big strawberries were given. Huge strawberries, the biggest possible strawberries were given when the sentences were optimal, and interestingly small strawberries were given when the sentence was completely untrue. This is something interesting about child's mind. So, they not only learned the scalar implicature, but also developed tolerance towards them. that it is fine, this is also correct and that also. So, this proved that children under less task demands can compute scalar implicature. So, that is the take home lesson from this experiment. Very interesting experiment, that under if the task demand is not too high. So, you do not have to choose between right and wrong, it is not a either or kind of an option, you have many options. When you give more options to a child, then the child actually does better in this scale. However, in spite of this kind of promising results, it still remains true that most of the time children do not get it 100% correct. So, they do not still match up to the adult level of understanding. That is about scalar implicature. The other kind of implicature is called relevance implicature. Now, this is another violation, as we said, because it implicatures the basic premise is that there is a violation of the maxims, and that is why there is an implicature and the child is supposed to infer that violation. They are supposed to understand and infer what was meant. So, in case of relevance implicature, the idea what is violated, the violation here is that of relation. So, the relation between two sentences. So, I am asking you something, you are saying something completely different. So, I need to, so it is not exactly related. So, there is not a one to one mapping of the question and answer, let us say. So, for example, if somebody asks, want to go for a walk, the other person says it is raining. The question was an yes no question, the answer would have been either yes or no, yes I want to go, no I do not want to go. That would be exact, then the relationship will be matched one to one. However, here the answer is it's raining. So, does it mean the other person did not understand the question? He did. He actually responded, he is still cooperating, because remember as per Grice, conversations are basically collaborative efforts. There is a cooperation between two persons when they are talking. So, here the second person is still collaborating, he is still cooperating and he is actually explaining. So, even though he or she is not saying that I will not go for a walk, it is by way of an explanation they are implying that. This is what the child is supposed to understand and infer, and this is our question whether they get it or not, right. So, studies show that children are not able to generate relevance implicature before the age of 6 years of age. So, they do not understand this before they are 6. So, in one study 2 to 7-year-old children were asked to choose a possible ending for a conversation exchange. So, these are all tested in conversation setup. So, this is the conversation is like this. In an exchange, two siblings are standing in front of a toy shop. The brother says, would you get me that game? Sister says, we do not have any money, and they were supposed to continue the task for the children was to continue and give a possible ending to the conversational exchange. So, what should happen after this? How would you take this forward? Where should it end like this? Only 6 to 7-year-old children provided endings that reflected that they understood the implied meaning. For example, the sentence like the girl did not cannot get her brother that game, that is the implicature, and this inferred meaning was given only by those children who were between 6 to 7 years. So, 2 to 6 those children did not get it correct, they could not do it properly, which means they did not understand what was implied here. Similarly, another study by De Villiers and group, they presented children with short interactions like some small conversations. So, dad, what happened to the ham? Boy, the dog looks happy. So, what is happening here is the father is saying where the ham has disappeared and the boy says that the dog looks happy. So, implied meaning here is that the dog has eaten the ham. Now, they were asked to explain, here they were not asked to complete the sentence, rather they were asked questions. What did the speaker mean? What did the boy mean? Why did he say that? And all this kind of questions were asked. Only again here also the same kind of findings, only children above 6 years could get the relevance implicature in their answer, which is the dog ate the ham. So, this is slightly more complicated sort of an implicature, and children before 6 years of age do not get it correct. So, what is the explanation? Here Here the explanations have been on various factors based on various variables. One of them is the methodological factor, that is the task condition. Remember, we in the previous example we saw in scalar implicature also we saw the same thing, that if you change the task demand, then children tend to do better. So, here also the same kind of questions have been put forward, that is it a matter of methodology. For example, asking children to reflect on a conversation requires meta-linguistic awareness. This is not just about the sentence, but it needs them to have a meta-linguistic understanding of the entire thing. Now, this understanding is not possible, is not accessible for very small children. This is learned, this is understood, this is acquired a little later. So, this skill is developed. In fact, many researchers claim that this develops through school years. So, hence it is expected that young children will not do very well and they will fare badly on this task, because entire school years is needed for understanding or meta-linguistic concepts. That is one hypothesis that has been put forward. Secondly, it is not clear whether children had the required world knowledge, that has also been proposed, because to compute. So, meta-linguistic awareness is not only about at a language level, but also about the way the ideas are encoded in language, and simultaneously you need to have adequate world knowledge. You need to know, many researchers have pointed this out, that in order for the child to infer that they are not having money, for example, see the sentence was, so we do not have any money. So, the connection between having money and getting the game, the child needs to know that you need to have money to buy certain things. You need to, if you are standing in front of a shop, you need to have money, because that is how the exchange works. So, you give money, you get the thing. Does the child in that experiment have that understanding? Did they develop that world knowledge, real life knowledge? That has also been questioned. What if it is not about computing at all, it is rather about lack of worldly understanding, because so the inference depended on the background knowledge, as they put it, background knowledge that products cost money and without money people cannot buy them. So, this could be a simple thing about world knowledge. So, later studies, however, these are slightly older studies, later studies found again a different result. For example, in one such study, they created very interesting experimental setup. They created a scenario where the child, if you look around, small children often play act. One of the play acting domains could also be that they are selling things. There are buyers, there are sellers, somebody is selling something and so on. So, that is the exact thing they created. They created a scenario where the child is selling something and to the experimenter. So, experimenter is the buyer, child is the seller, and then the experimenter would the child will show something to there are pictures. So, the child will show the picture to the experimenter will give a comment on that picture, either a positive or a negative adjective, and the child's task was there were two boxes, accepted and rejected. So, if the child thought that the experimenter will buy her product, then the object will go into one box, if not it will go into another box. Now, the interesting thing here was connecting the adjective with the intention of the experimenter to either buy or not to buy, right. So, the experimenter would use something like a positive or a negative adjective, like the trousers are either pretty or ugly. So, if the child is showing them a picture of trousers, pair of trousers, and the experimenter says, oh, they are ugly, that means I will not buy this. So, the child has to infer that meaning and accordingly put the thing in the rejected box, or if it is oh, they are pretty, the trousers are pretty, then she has to put it in the box, that is accepted box. This required the child to infer from the adjective used the buyer's mentality, right. So, this was the basic task. In this case, even the 3-year-olds could correctly calculate the implicature. 3-year-old, till now we were saying that before 6 years they were not able to do they were not able to infer it correctly, but in this experiment what they found was 3-year-olds also could correctly calculate the implicature and 5-year-olds did so at par with adults. So, they got it correct all the time. 3-year-olds also could get it correct. So, this was the finding in this particular study. Many such studies followed by even Tomasello group also did another many other studies are there, but that means the children are able to get it. But the question that researchers have asked after this, after they got positive result and negative result, the question that was asked is, do the positive results tell us whether children are actually computing the relevance implicature or not, or are they doing some other kind of inference, other kind of mental processes to arrive at this result. So, just getting it correct does not mean they are able to compute. That is the new problem that we have. So, the positive results do not tell us whether children truly computed a relevance implicature. That is, we are not sure whether they understood that the speaker meant to convey an indirect request through a statement, because all of these are statements, right. So, when the experimenter said those trousers are pretty, this is a statement. In some other cases it will be a request. So, this understanding the indirect request or such other things requires computing the speaker's mentality. Are they doing this actually, or did they simply drew justified inference about what should happen or what the speaker wanted given the stated preference? Rather than understanding it in terms of implicature, are they going just looking at it from a real life perspective and what in terms of what should happen. This is the other theory that has been put forward. Thus, the results on children's ability to compute relevance implicature are also mixed, and there are various kinds of hypotheses that have been put forward. Due to paucity of time, we cannot go into the details, but the papers will be all added in the references. So, you can go look up. It is often believed that children depend on contextual cues to infer their understanding rather than relying on the speaker's intent. So, we have looked at implicatures of two kinds, which is one of the important aspect of conversational techniques, conversational strategies, and we have seen that for both we have mixed results. For scalar implicature, results are still somewhat clear that if you give them a helping hand, they do get it, but for relevance there are many theories. So, this is a sort of a mixed result. So, this is where we will end our lecture 3. Lecture 4 will take up yet another important variable of conversation, communication, which is turn taking, and we will follow it up with understanding non-literal language, and that is how we will go ahead. So, thank you. We will look forward to you joining in the next lecture.